Now then, let's talk about a few things, like projects that have stalled. Yeah, and it's like, how do you start again? They've stalled, obviously stalled for a reason, and you need to get them back on track. Hang on a minute, I've just got to cut the end off that. So you've got to get back on track with it, but you don't know how. Because it's like, maybe you've got 3/4 of the way through the project, like this project that I'm doing now. Yeah, and you've reached a point where things got sort of partially finished, and then you got dragged on to other things. So what are you going to do? And this particular project, well, if you go back in my playlists and find the one about Windows rebuild, you'll find when I put the last piece up, and it's a bit of a mental battle. 720, just off the edge, I think. Yes, that's 720. And what I found, the best thing to do is to do a bit. It doesn't always work, because those of you who've been taking a bit of notice on the last, at least 20 videos, you'll have seen these window sections stacked up next to the lathe. That was an attempt to get things going again. Unsuccessful. But at least it was, the sections were made. So I selected timber, I'd resawn it, planed it face and edge, and then cut the rebates on the dimension saw. So it was sort of moved on, and then I stalled again. Can't remember why. Maybe I had to go and do some work, and then maybe it was vegetable plot time and this and that and the other. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just making yet another start. I've sanded the rod off, I'm remarking it. I've got the measurements for the casement, so I'm marking up the rod, and I shall probably mark some of the timber, and then I'll stop there. And tomorrow I've got a point where I can start again, because having marked up the timber, then I can cut all the mortises and the tenons, and then I'm going to stop. And then the next day I shall do a bit more, and I'll just sort of build up momentum. It's important to sort of know yourself, yeah, so you can get the project started again. Maybe what I'm saying is totally obvious, but a lot of creative people have problems when they stop. You know, it's like writer's block. You stop and you can't get going again. And talking about creative people, one of the things that I can never understand is that's the sight line, that there is the setting forward line for the shoulders on the tenons. Yeah, one thing I can't understand is people who want to be part of a project and then don't communicate. It does my head in. It's like, okay, so you want to be involved in this, but you don't communicate. Well, there's a point when you just have to walk away and go, you're not being helpful, so we'll just go sideways on this one. Or you just give up and just go, well, it was a nice idea, but obviously the momentum's not there to crack on with it. So So I'm just going to get on with this for a bit, and I'll do a few clips from time to time on this window casement construction. But if you're wanting to make some casements, then there is a whole playlist that takes from milling the raw timber all the way through to the finished article, but not the painting. And what I do with these is, once I've made them, I will go and fit them in the frame, make sure they fit nicely, then put the old frame back in, or the old casement back in, and then paint the casement, the new one. Undercoat, no, primer, undercoat, and 3 layers of top coat. And give it plenty of time to dry between, and flat it down and all that lot. There's no rush. As long as something's happening, the job gets done. Now, that is a top rail and that is a bottom rail. You can't see that one. Yes, you can. You can't see this one here. Oh, you can just about. Right, so then we have a glazing bar halfway up. So from the sight line to the sight line, it is 5950. So that's 600 mil less 5 mil. So that's 300 less 2.5. So you got 300 less 2.5 mil. So that is the centre of the glazing bar. Now I've got to remember how big the glazing bars are. I'll just have to go and find one. So here's a glazing bar, and it's 40 mil wide. So either side of that centre line we need to go 20 mil. That is to the sight line. And then inboard of that will be the rebate. Okay, but I've got to turn it round on you because I'm facing it this way. And I can't remember what the rebates are. I think they're 12 mil deep or something like that. 12 by 40. So they're 40 mil from there to there because of the double glazing unit and the bedding, etc., etc. So that's the setting forward lines for the shoulders, and there we are. We can now mark out 2 stiles with a bottom rail which is bigger than the top rail, and the top rail is the same size as the stiles. So in other words, these stiles will be handed, i.e. they will be a symmetrical pair rather than identical because of the position of that and the rebate. Right, I'm just going to mark that. So as you can see there, I've transferred the marks and then squared round. And over here we've got the marks for the glazing bar and the mortise. So let's just zoom out a bit and go over here. So where's my pencil gone? Here it is. So because this is a stile, and the mortises are based around this shoulder because that's the easiest way to do it. So the mortise is going to be there, so I just need to mark those out, and these are going to be open-ended mortises. So that is the bottom of the stile, so we can cut that off and mortise that through. You can either use a mortising machine, you can mark it out with a marking gauge, or because it's open-ended you can use a bandsaw, but you've got to create a hole here to start with. So I'm going to crack on with that. Now the main thing about all this sort of thing is take your time. It's like I was saying with the painting, just take your time, there's no rush. One of the problems of human nature is that you want the finished product, and actually part of the joy is the doing of it. It's like round here, there's loads of things to do. Cutting firewood, looking after the woods, looking after the meadows, keeping the hedges in order, doing the veg plot, repairing the glass house, and it's all part of life. So you know, life isn't sort of novelty and really exciting things. Life is really about the living of it, and there's no rush. Just need to get on at a steady rate. So the scourge of modern society, where everything's instant, is has a hugely detrimental effect, I feel. Anyway, I'm just going to crack on with this now. So from time to time, of course, I have to create some kindling, and I like to create lots of it. And this was a bit of floorboard that I'd kept. It's not floorboard at all, it's skirting that I kept for ages, and then I needed to use some of it. I had to cut it down, and lo and behold, there was some woodworm holes in it, little tracks. So I thought, that's it, it's kindling. It's useful to have several of these tubs, mainly full, so that there's never a fuss. Next to the wood box for the house, which gets filled every day, there's a box full of kindling. So first thing in the morning, if that old Rayburn of ours in the kitchen, if perchance it's pretty low, which most of the time it is, but there's some embers, just a few bits of kindling and some smaller diameter stuff, and within sort of 10 minutes it's away again. So this is this mortising machine that I fixed on the running a 3-phase motor on single phase supply, and I've got the hollow mortise chisel right up against the shoulder, because that's where the mortise goes. And for those people who don't know, there is a hole in the back of the chisel here where the chips go out the back, and there must be a gap between the auger and the chisel. So basically you put it all together with a gap here. Once the auger's in place, then you lift the chisel up a bit. It's about a 1/16 of an inch or so. If you hear the auger screaming against the chisel, then you know you've got it too tight, and all it'll do is create heat. So you've got to lift it. Now it's going to be a bit noisy, so I'll just run it up and then turn the sound down. So contact. windy outside, but yeah, March, and the wind and the sun are drying next year's firewood. Lots of breeze and air moving through everything, and as you see on that cherry log there, I've run the chainsaw down that to make the bark peel away, because cherry tends to, the bark tends to keep the water in, and it's the same with birch and small diameter ash. So the week has moved on. The stiles are all mortised, and there's a little mortise there just for the glazing bar, which goes something like that, and the tenon is actually on this piece, because if you try to do the tenon on the bottom of the rebate end, then it'll all be one-sided. So previously it's a little square tenon just on this piece here, so that'll do. I'm talking just there, and the other tenons are cut, and the tenon shoulder is actually cut this side of that shoulder, so it just takes the edge of the shoulder off, so that the face of the tenon is flush with that shoulder there. So those are all done, but I've only got one piece of glazing bar, so we're going to have to make some more glazing bar. Now, quite a while ago I picked up some short lengths of cypress, which, you know, there's all sorts of different types of cypress. There's Monterey cypress, which is absolutely brilliant. There's Lawson cypress, and then there's all sorts of hybrids, which include Leyland or Leylandii, which is a hedge, but it actually grows as a timber tree as well. So you can get short sections that are relatively knot free, yeah, and mill them and dry them. They make excellent joinery material, and the little live knots are not a problem. And you don't get many dead knots in this sort of tree because it's shade bearing, so the little branches very rarely die off. Anyway, we're just going to zoom in on the end grain of this, if I can support it, because it's quite dense. It's dry. It must have been air drying for at least, let me think now, when was the last at Brooksby Melton? That's over in Leicestershire. It must be 4 years ago. That's where this came from. They were felling a windbreak. They were developing the site, and we were doing chainsaw assessing, and they were felling these reasonably sized Leyland or something like that. I think it's a bit, you never can tell, but it was a cypress anyway. There was a whole load of them, and this was a particularly nice piece, so I brought some back with me, and it wasn't a fuss because it was all going to just get burnt anyway. But it's quite dense and it's nice and dry. If I put a moisture meter on this now, it would probably be something like 18%, 20%, or even less. But ideal for making windows, because you don't need kiln dried timber for making windows. And it's all covered, of course, in my book Timber for Building. But let's just zoom in and look at this end grain. Then I'm going to go downstairs to the dimension saw and just make some glazing bars. And whilst I'm there, I'll use this whole piece and make loads of glazing bars. Then they're there in stock, because I've got a few more windows other than this one to make. So I've cut the end off this, so that is not water stain, that's the original cut. You can see how it's been sat around for a while. But you know, just in there, the grain will be reasonably dense. Alright, it's not dead straight with the way that the glazing bar is going to work, but it will be fine because this is quite stable stuff once it's dry. It's quite delightful. Anyway, I'm going to crack on with that. And the solar's busy generating. It's early March, 2.3 kilowatts, about 10 o'clock in the morning. So there we go, machined up. Now, why am I using this and why am I making it myself? Well, innumerable reasons. One, it's nice durable timber and it's stable. Two, I just have to put the effort in. I'm not buying it. Three, it's grown in this country, so it's effectively local. So there's three good reasons to start with. It's about keeping your impact as low as possible. So it's not cut halfway around the world and then brought over here by ship and then transported by lorry and this, that and the other. I was there at the time and I brought it back. So there's no impact. I also then machined the timber in a bright sunny day. So the majority of the electricity is generated on site from our own solar. Add to that, as I've said earlier, it's a durable timber and it's stable. Yeah, it's a no-brainer not to do it. And there's the satisfaction of, yeah, we're doing the right thing. Right, so that's the glazing bars done. I've got to mark them out and cut some tenons on the end, and they're real dinky little tenons. And then I've got to go off and do other things now, but maybe next week we can put this together.